The Final Fantasy VII speedrun has no shortage of skips. From short cutscene dodges saving as little as 10 seconds in the 7-ish hour run, to skipping 20-minute sections of the game by using precise movement to hit screen transitions that the developers never intended the player to use. However, there is one skip that was thought to be impossible for years, until the combined efforts of some of the most knowledgeable people in the community came together to make it possible. This is the story of how the Cosmo Canyon skip was routed. Cosmo Canyon Skip, or CC Skip for short, was first discovered by a prominent member of the FF7 community named BrutalSpeed. Upon reaching Cosmo Canyon, the buggy is supposed to break down, forcing the player to enter the village and resolve Red 13's story arc before continuing across the river to Nibelheim. However, BrutalSpeed discovered the game could enter a glitch state, where if the game were to handle the buggy as if it were a caught chocobo instead, one could quickly exit the buggy and re-enter it and hit the trigger to cause the breakdown. The game would fail to lock the buggy's movement. The player would then be able to continue on to Nibelheim, but there was a problem. Whenever the game enters a random encounter, the world map is removed from the PlayStation's memory, saving only the essential information due to the limited memory of the system at the time, and as a result, the glitch would not carry over between encounters. This meant that in order to skip Cosmo Canyon, a runner would need to catch a chocobo, cause the glitch, enter the buggy, and cross the trigger without getting an encounter throughout the entire process, which introduces the problem. There is only one known way to cause the glitch state of the buggy chocobo hybrid. The player must get off the chocobo in a section of the world map where the chocobo is technically on traversable ground, and have Cloud get off the chocobo onto the sand surrounding Gold Saucer, causing him to slide, and have the game take over his movement, cancelling out the game's code to have the chocobo flee after getting off of it. So, in order for the skip to work, one must A. Catch a chocobo, B. Get off of it on the border of the sand surrounding Gold Saucer and enter the buggy, take the buggy all the way to Cosmo Canyon without getting any encounters on the way, then crossing the trigger as described earlier so that the buggy's movement wouldn't become locked. Only by satisfying all of these conditions would the skip work. Due to the odds of not getting any encounters over this vast distance being so remote, it was resigned to only be a TAS viable speedrun strategy. The random nature of encounters of the world map was known for quite some time when CC Skip was revealed to the community. However, due to the complexity of the skip, the mechanics would need to be tested further than ever before. There are two main categories that certain RNG mechanics fall under for Final Fantasy VII. The first is frame-based RNG, which is mostly used inside of battles to determine the elements of battles such as starting ATB values, critical hits, misses, and damage rolls. This RNG changes its output on every frame and is also affected by the controller inputs from the player, which usually makes this type of RNG unmanipulatable for most runs due to the level of precision required. The second type of RNG is what is known as seeded RNG, where the result of a given event is determined by specific variables in the game that wouldn't be immediately obvious to the player. The variable that decides this could be a number that advances depending on what type of encounters you get, like in Final Fantasy VIII to determine the Zheal card, or as in the case with Final Fantasy VII, the in-game time, or otherwise known as IGT for short. The world map has several factors that determine when and where you get an encounter. The direction in which you move, the camera angle, and the starting position on where you load onto the world map, but most importantly, the IGT. Knowing all of these variables, manipulations were able to be set up when traversing the world map, like getting the required encounter in certain routes, or setting up a favourable position to get past the Midgar Zolom. The reason that CC skip couldn't be routed like other world map manipulations was that it required manipulating an encounter to catch a chocobo and then continue the manipulation all the way to Cosmo Canyon. Having an encounter in the middle of a manipulation instead of at the end of one had never been tried before. This is where our second FF7 runner and router is introduced, Meesbaker. Meesbaker decided to begin testing to see how the world map could be manipulated further and made two findings. Manipulations could be done with an encounter in them provided that the encounter always ended at the same time by closing the final spoil screen on the desired IGT value. The buggy actually had reliable movement, disproving an assumption that the buggy did not move in a pixel perfect manner. With these findings, Meesbaker began to establish a setup which involved saving and resetting the game once, then manipulating the game to catch the chocobo, trigger the glitch, and get to Cosmo Canyon without an encounter. Here is what it looks like. When you load onto the world map in the buggy, head straight down to this pixel perfect position. Save the game on the IGT value 2 hours, 43 minutes and 10 seconds. Soft reset the game and reload the file whilst keeping track of the time elapsed. Exit the buggy and move 4 frames up, then run right. Successfully capture the chocobo. Close the spoil screen 1 minute and 15 seconds after first loading the save. Run left on the chocobo to the sand. Get off the chocobo to cause the glitch. Close the text box and move down to this pixel location and enter the buggy. Using a menu buffer, head down left. Use the menu to stop your movement on this position. Hit down left and open the menu over 2 frames. Move left so the nose of the buggy hits this visual cue. Move up until you hit this section of wall. Move left so that the front wheel covers the texture line. Move up over the small cliff, then 1 frame more. Move right 1 frame, then move up 1 frame. Go right until the buggy moves up in a distinct way. Menu buffer for an upright movement to this position. Hold up for 7 frames. Move right so that the nose of the buggy touches the texture line. Move up using the shadow as a visual cue. Move left until the nose touches the texture line. Move up 1 frame, move left until the position required for crossing the trigger, and execute the skip. With this, the first RTA viable strategy for CC skip had been found, and Meesbaker revealed it to the FF7 speedrunning community. If you didn't know beforehand, the PlayStation version of Final Fantasy VII has 2 main speedrun categories. The first being any percent basically allows any skip or strategy to be used provided the game has not been manipulated prior to beginning the speedrun at the selection of new game. The general strategy of any percent is to progress through the game until unlocking Cait Sith, then acquiring his second limit break slots immediately before the Materia Keeper fight. With the limit break slots, it is possible to get the game over move, which instantly kills any enemy in the game, including bosses, using some speedrun trickery. The second category is known as any percent no slots, or just no slots for short, in which using the limit break slots is banned. This forces the runner to adopt other strategies to finish the game other than using the same limit break repeatedly, which some runners prefer and is the more popular category for the PlayStation version. No slots sees various strategies used, but the main source of damage towards the end of Disc 1 and onwards is the use of Tifa's weapon Power Soul, which increases its damage output under certain conditions. When she is in critical health, her damage is doubled, and if she has the death sentence status element, her damage is quadrupled. These multipliers stack. Additionally, the Materia Death Blow is also equipped, which when successful, makes her physical attack a critical hit, doubling the damage again. However, with the finding of CC skip, there was a new problem for the no slots route. There was no death sentence until after Temple of the Ancients. Upon the release of the CC skip method by Meesbaker, the current world record holder for the no slots category, Zheal, took to help with routing the new skip and was presented with this problem. The first hurdle to cross was waiting just across the river in the Grey Mountains past Nibelheim. Materia Keeper. Materia Keeper has a very unusual strategy in the no slots route. In Final Fantasy VII, there exists a hidden mechanic where if either a party member or an enemy's HP falls exactly on 7,777 HP, then Lucky Sevens is activated, and all damage calculation is overridden to always deal 7777 damage. This even applies to poison damage, which normally deals a fixed rate of damage based on the afflicted enemy's maximum HP pool. So if one were to poison Materia Keeper and deal a precise amount of damage to him, then the next poison tick would deal 7777 damage, thus killing him much more quickly than fighting him in a conventional manner. This was done by having Red 13 equipped with the poison materia and Seraph Comb, aiming to inflict the poison status and 99 damage with the spell Bio, or as close as possible without going over. If Bio were to underdamage, then the remaining damage would be inflicted by having Tifa in the mini state and dealing 1, or with death sentence, 4 damage at a time with a physical attack. However, with Seraph Comb acquired at the conclusion of Cosmo Canyon, and with lower levels due to not getting the experience from the death sentence fight and Gene attack, the damage from Bio was no longer adequate from Red, or any other party member for this strategy to work any longer. Instead, after testing multiple combinations, Zheal found a combination of damage that was consistent to inflict the 623 damage, or more precisely, 99 damage plus 2 ticks of 262 damage from poison. Having Cloud deal bio damage and inflict poison for around 72 damage and a basic attack from Tifa for 27 damage was the most consistent, then using the mini strategy to fill any damage that was further required. The last challenge for routing, and the hardest at that, was Temple of the Ancients, where Red Dragon and Demon's Gate are met. Due to not having the enemy skill Death Sentence, which is learnt in Cosmo Canyon for the 2 temple bosses, Tifa's effective damage was reduced to less than a quarter of what it was in the previous route, and made the strategies ineffective, and changing them was necessary. Saying that changing the strategies of Red Dragon and Demon's Gate might come off as a bit of an understatement. These 2 bosses are regarded as the most difficult section of the speedrun for no slots, requiring a high level of both execution and decision making to maximise the odds that the fights go optimally. Red Dragon has a remarkably high damage amount for this point of the game and required the runner to use cross slash from Cloud to paralyse him, and then have Tifa execute 4 death blows to kill him before the paralysis wore off. As the odds of death blow landing are 100% when an enemy is paralysed, but those odds fall to about 30% when Red Dragon is in his normal state. Then there's Demon's Gate. This slab of rock is a fucking asshole. With 10,000 HP, 47% more than Red Dragon's, high single damage attacks and party attacks, an insane ATB speed where your characters barely outpace his ATB when they're buffed with haste, and an exceedingly high rate of landing critical hits, he is unanimously agreed to be the most difficult boss of the no slots category. And he's also immune to paralyze, so the Red Dragon strategy can't be employed here. Zheal and Meesbaker together went through several strategies for the Red Dragon fight. Initially, they reverted to an older and safer strategy of taking Aqualung into the fight to compensate damage if a runner didn't get the 4 death blows in time, but upon testing, Zheal found it didn't work. The damage was inadequate, and deaths were too high. After that, Work Glove on Tifa was tried, a high power weapon with a trade-off of no materia slots, but it still wasn't enough. Eventually, Mies calculated the damage that Yoshiyuki would do on Red Dragon, a weapon for Cloud which adds a multiplier for every dead character in the fight, double damage for 1 dead party member, and triple damage for 2 dead party members. Ideally, the fight would go the fastest if Cloud was the only member not knocked out for the fight. Use Cross Slash and Death Blow with the triple damage Yoshiyuki. But the paralysis wore off too quickly, and was put into a state of solo Cloud versus Red Dragon. So Zheal settled on only having 1 party member dead, Aerith, seeing experience points wouldn't benefit her for much longer, and using Tifa to hold ATB so Red Dragon's paralyze would last longer to have Cloud inflict more damage. Rinse and repeat, and Red Dragon now had a consistent setup without the need for Death Sentence. The theory behind Demon's Gate didn't change too much from the older route, where Tifa was in Death Sentence for the fight to do consistent damage, along with Molotovs being thrown by Cloud and Aerith to work down his high HP pool. Instead, more Molotovs were routed into the run and were the sole source of damage for the fight to start off with. However, Mies was testing another strategy which would speed up the fight significantly. With Yoshiyuki in the route, Mies began testing taking Kate Sith into the temple instead of Tifa, and running him in the Fury state for the fight to roll multiple dice limit breaks, and having Cloud do basic attacks with Aerith dead, again, for consistent 400 plus damage attacks. Even though dice damage is incredibly random, even low rolls of dice would do more damage than a Molotov, having a median damage of 700 and potentially up to 2400 with a roll of double sixes. And with that, the task of routing CC Skip had been achieved, as after going through the temple, one can learn Death Sentence on the way to the City of the Ancients from the Bound Fat. Watching the routing and eventual run attempts in real time was an absolutely amazing experience. CC Skip has been thought to be impossible since 2013 after all. If you'd like to learn more about how the skip was brought to the community back then, there is a whole story behind that told by Luzbelheim. I'll leave a link in the description and I recommend you watch it if you haven't already. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll leave you with a montage of the best moments I've seen during the last few months with an absolute banger of a song. If you'd like to know where the songs came from in the video, they're available for free on OCRemix, links also in the description.
I don't know what to do. No, not this. Oh my god, I threw a Molotov on red. Fuck. It's so cool. Oh man. Low even 5909.